This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah.
Blackout tinting. He's the one who does it. And I had it, but he didn't like have a page or anything years ago. He did mine. He did really good. But he doesn't do it on the weekends. That's where I'm having a hard time with people don't do it on the weekends. And I work. And even if I have a Friday off, I work Friday and I need somebody to work. Me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There was a guy here that did it.
Oh,
There was a native guy that used to do it. He did my dad's.
yeah, that's operations.
I don't know if he's still.
This one is the extrication stuff, right?
No, this is just ops. So this is just talking about landing zones. Why the frick did it do that?
Other track.
Yeah, because they have another window. Unless it's just a strip, but some people still do
What the
it.
frick is happening right now?
Some people still drive around with it, so.
It wasn't.
Yeah. All right, we're just waiting on him to finish up real quick. We'll get started on this bullcrap. So EMS operations and pediatrics are the most failed parts of National Registry. I don't know why. EMS operations is pretty simple. Every once in a while, they like to throw some bullcrap in there. It's like, how big is this oxygen cylinder?
They did that on this one.
Yeah. It's freaking stupid. Like, I don't care about all 16 different sizes of oxygen, but they like to throw it in there a little bit. Same thing with like ambulance sizes and stuff like that. So we'll go over a handful of that tonight. Thursday night is hazmat, triage, and then we're swapping Tuesdays and Thursday next week. Becca's gonna do terrorism, and then I'm gonna do.
You already recorded?
I'm gonna do the other
What were you?
one. Mikey asked if we could teach BLS CPR to BLM tomorrow because CJ triple booked himself and now I don't have anybody to teach him. And he pays us time to do it. So. EMS operations.
So, what were we doing?
Probably. We can leave the dogs for him.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Also at 10 o'clock, they're gonna be there to do the home inspection, so you and the dogs can have to sit down.
We're going for a walk at 10 o'clock.
Woo! Sorry. But let's 8 hours overtime. Lincoln's like, frick.
You guys are over on your own time.
Uh,
I only had 130 minutes.
I think I'm up to like 160 or shit. It's fine. All right, EMS operations. So, today we're gonna review the day-to-day activities, describe different phases of the 911 call, and then review considerations of air resources. The biggest things out here is time to air resource. So that may change in the near future. If you're on mine side, it's not really gonna affect you at all. But here in the near future, there are conversations being had way above my pay grade, and there are air companies trying to drop an aircraft at the airport. So that may change, but as of right now, it still takes us about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to get a resource on the ground in Lander County. And that's if everything goes to plan. If there's an available resource in this region, they're not coming out like Reno or something crazy like that. So.
I'm surprised they haven't got aircraft out here.
Yeah, so there's like specific parameters that they have to meet. They have to have at least 120 transfers out of the community every year or something to like break even. Last year we did 165, so that's above their like minimum standard or whatever. So yeah. So there's different types of ambulances that you'll see. The type 1 ambulances is the most common ambulance. That's the ones that we have. predominantly in this county. We have one other type of ambulance, but type 1 ambulances are the most common ambulances. They're just a standard box style ambulance with like bigger chassis, front end. Most commonly, they're like the diesel, the Dodge or the Chevy Ford diesel trucks. Then you have these ugly bastards. These are the ambulances, the trauma Twinkies that ain't got no rooms in it. The Andy's gonna hit his head on everything in it.
Yeah.
That's what these are. Some of the newer ones, like MedX has one, and HGH has one that's like super tall in the back, which is super nice. The ones that me and Becca grew up in were not tall in the back, and they sucked. They were terrible. But that's the Type 2 ambulance. The Type 3 ambulances are similar to the Type 1 ambulances. They just have like that U-Haul style, like weird front end. Most of these are going to be gas. They do make diesel versions of these. Grady had a couple of them. But typically, if you're in like a urban city environment, you'll see like the Type 2 or Type 3 ambulances, most common. Some of the cities will have like Type 1s, but they started going away from the Type 1s just because these Type 2s and Type 3s can fit in smaller places and they're a little bit more economical. And then we have the Type 3 or Type 4 ambulances. These are like big Freightliners, chassis, trucks. You don't need a special license to drive this truck. It falls just under the weight limit for like a Class F or a Class B license. The only caveat to that is they make these with a 4-door chassis, and Grady has one that has a CT scanner in the back, and you need a Class B license to drive it because it falls over the weight limit at that point. But your standard Type 4 ambulance is air brakes, big Freightliner, Peterbilt chassis, International chassis, depending on what it is. Like Miami-Dade runs like International chassis Type 4 ambulances. We had Type 4 ambulances in Jackson County, and they were Freightliners. Super comfy ride in. Those trucks are freaking awesome. I love them. I wish we could have them out here. Not really feasible in the desert, but they are super comfy. So
Maybe you can jack it up and then take it.
you can. Them things get real top heavy real quick.
I don't even know who.
So when we talk about in-service, so every time you come on shift, you need to check your ambulance. I don't care where you're at. I say the same thing goes for mine trucks, because when something happens, if you don't have your equipment, you're kind of out of luck, right? So we have a system here, it's called Station Stock, that we use for an ambulance check. I do not recommend. Don't go back to your company and say, oh, we need Station Stock. It sucks. There's another system called Operative IQ that works really well. Image Trend has like a version of this system. But generally speaking, if you work on an ambulance service, they have some form of check-off list for their truck. And it's online, you get on there, you sign into it, you check off all the things on your truck. There's an operations side of that, and then there's an equipment side to it. But the biggest thing here is when you go in and check off your truck, you need to check every aspect of it. You need to make sure the thing's got gas in it or diesel in it. You need to make sure it's got coolant in it. Look up under the truck, make sure it's not leaking anything. You want to do like your equipment checks on all your lights and sirens and stuff. We have an ambulance out here that if you turn the lights on and the headlights on, when you turn the headlights on, the emergency lights turn off, but then you turn the headlights off and the emergency lights come on.
What the hell?
I don't really know how it got wired like that, but like it was like one of our last ditch efforts when our ambulance got wrecked. We were like, oh, we can use this one for a little while. And like the first 911 call, we had to go run in the call or run in it. We like turn the lights on, turn the headlights on, all the emergency lights went off. I was like, what the frick? And I turned the headlights off and all the lights come back on. I was like, I don't.
Somebody wired that.
Somebody wired this weird. So check your stuff. Horns and sirens. Make sure all your lights are working. It is a state requirement that all lights operable on that vehicle are in working order. So when they come out to check your ambulance, they will check all the lights, turn signals, brake lights, headlights, they check every emergency light. So everything that has a light bulb has to be working. Heat and air is big. You don't want to be running around out here in the middle of July with no air conditioning, running on heat stroke patients, and then you're having a heat stroke in the back of the ambulance. Radio checks, and then checking for damage on the outside and inside of the truck. If you come in and there's damage on the truck and you don't report it, now it's your damage on the truck. So if you see damage on an ambulance that wasn't there when you left, it needs to be reported. Don't assume somebody else reported it, because then if they didn't, you're on shift for 2 days and Mike comes out there, is like, what the frick you run into on the truck? I didn't do that. Why didn't you say anything? Well, all somebody else did. It doesn't work. So, and then your supply check. My big thing is when you're in the back of the truck, you need to know where your equipment is, right? So we have everything like laid out, like airway cabinets and trauma cabinets and OB cabinets and all that stuff. That all sounds good, until you get one of those ambulances that has like one of those weird layouts on it, and like half your airway stuff's over here and half of it's over here, and your tourniquets are over here and your stomach bleed stuff's over here, and like you're just like fitting things where they can fit. So know where your stuff is. Make sure you have enough supplies to get you through. You don't need to have enough. I love the quote. I was told it one day. There's a direct correlation with how much extra bull crap you have on your ambulance and the incompetence of the people that ride on the ambulance. You don't need extra stuff, but make sure you have enough stuff to get you through the calls, right? And then check all your batteries on the equipment. Everything we have has some sort of battery on it. The monitors, the stretcher, all of our video laryngoscopes, our pumps, our vents, everything has a goddamn battery. So if you're not checking that stuff, right, like you're gonna look kind of goofy if you show up and your freaking monitor's dead and you don't have another battery, right? So make sure you check your stuff. Oxygen tanks. So we have the big oxygen tank, and then generally you'll have at least 2 smaller oxygen tanks. Depending on where you work, they'll have like a couple of more like stored in like little oxygen holders around the truck or whatever. Our trucks, we have like a big oxygen tank. We have one in the oxygen bag, and then we have one on a stretcher. So make sure you check all those, because again, they'll look kind of goofy if you show up to the cardiac arrest or you show up to the breathing call and you get some oxygen, you ain't got nothing. So restock and clean your truck. These trucks are billboards. They have logos all over the side of them. Becca knows, Marcus knows, we wash our ambulances. You know, if it's raining for 2 or 3 days, don't stand out there in the middle of a freaking rainstorm and wash it, but wash the freaking truck. For y'all, it's different. Y'all run up and down the mud all the time, but we wash our truck. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're a mobile logo for whatever company or agency that you work for, and if your truck looks like crap, you look like crap. So, all right. So the way the 911 call system works, right? So you have your initial receiving 911 call. So your EMD dispatchers, and we've talked about this before, most dispatch systems at this point, sure there's some that still aren't, but most are EMD trained. And so essentially what that means is when they get a 911 call, they have like a whole book. My mom's a dispatcher. We used to go up there and hang out in there and like watch them do it. They have this giant book. And so if you call 911, you're like, my chest hurts. They're going to go in there, they're going to look at their book, and they're going to flip to this big old page that says chest pain. And then they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. No, they're not trying to delay your process of getting help. They just need to answer these questions, mainly for us, right? So they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're also going to give you any sort of pre-arrival instructions. So when you call 911, they're going to tell you put animals away, open your doors, unlock your doors if you can. If you have a family member that goes down, they're going to walk you through CPR, right? So like there's a whole big process that the dispatchers do, and everybody gets mad at them because they're like, you're asking me so many stupid questions. They're not stupid. There's a purpose for them. And then they're gonna assign a priority to the call. Around here, they assign priorities to the call, so there's like alpha level, Bravo, Charlie, Delta level calls, priority 1, 2, 3. That changes depending on where you're at. So, like some places, like priority 1 are like low acuity calls, priority 3 are emergency calls. And then other places, the priority 1 are emergency and priority 3 are low acuity. So depending on where you are, just like know how that works. For us, we don't really pay attention to the E&D codes, because if you call and you say you have chest pain, unless, you know, somebody calls and says, oh, I fell and I hurt my knee, and somebody else calls and says I have chest pain, like, we're just going to the call. In an agency like this, if that ever happens, now you have to kind of become the triage person. Like, yeah, they fell and they said their knee hurt. That's all that I got in an 911 call. Well, I'm going to go to the chest pain call. Can I predict that they fell on a piece of rebar and now they got a freaking piece of rebar stuck to their knee? Like, if you didn't tell the dispatcher that, no, right? So you have to make those decisions. If you go to a bigger agency or a little bit busier agency, they'll prioritize these calls and then send you to whatever is the highest priority. So when we were working in Atlanta, there would be like 20 or 30 911 calls holding at any given time, and all of them were freaking bullcrap. If you were 20 years old and you called because your tum-tum hurt, you weren't getting an ambulance for 6 or 8 hours, right? So that's kind of the emergency, like the overview of like the EMD dispatcher and how that system works. So when you're responding to the call, the number one thing here, like be prepared mentally, physically, be prepared for that drive. For us, sometimes, like I've driven down to Alston at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? It's a long drive. I've driven all the way to the Kingston turnoff at 4 a.m., right? Like, that's a long drive. You got to be prepared for that. Marcus will tell you those rides down 305 at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, those rides get real long. Try to be as mentally prepared, physically prepared as you can. Sleep when you can. We are not opposed to naps at this agency. So if you ever work here, some people like to nap more than others. Get your naps in, right?
Like doing paramedic course.
Get your naps in, right? So be prepared to drive. And then think about all the things that, as you're on the way to this call, right? Scene safety doesn't start when you get there. It starts before you get there, right? If the call comes out as a domestic, I'm not gonna roll up on them until the sheriff's department gets there, right? Think about that. Don't just go busting into these scenes. You know, you don't have the equipment to take care of these fights and stuff, so. And then drive with due regard. Has everybody heard about due regard? You know what due regard is? So due regard is it is a way that any emergency vehicle must respond to a call. So when I'm in an ambulance, you are not required to stop for me with my emergency lights on. There's a misconception where people are like, oh, I got my lights and sirens on, you got to get out of my way. That's not true. We are asking permission for you to move. When I pull up to a red light, I am asking permission for everybody at that light to stop. They do not have to. Now, the sheriff's department might pull you over and say, well, you didn't yield to this emergency vehicle. Absolutely. But there's no requirement that they have to stop. So if I pull up to a red light, I have to stop and make sure that everybody else stops. If I blow through that red light, that happened in Elko County, that fire truck blew through that stop sign and killed that little girl or paralyzed that little girl up there, all of them got charged for that, right? So when you are in an emergency vehicle, all you are doing is asking for permission from the people around you to do what you're doing. When you're passing people, you are asking permission to go around these people and everybody slow down. So when you're driving an ambulance, you're driving a fire truck, it doesn't matter. If you need to come to complete stops at stop signs, You need to come to complete stops at any sort of red lights. I know we got like 6 red lights in this town. So stop at the red light, stop at the stop signs. Ask permission, treat every lane as you're going through as it's its own lane. So if you're coming up to an intersection that has 2 lanes, a turning lane, and 2 more lanes, you need to stop at every single lane. Because if you got a bus in that first lane and you stop and the bus stops and you go cruising through the rest of it, now the person that's on the other side of the bus don't see you and now you're hit. So due regard. Emergency lights should be visible 360 degrees. Like we said, or like I said a few minutes ago, every emergency light on your apparatus should be working and in working condition. And then when you're playing with the sirens, I know everybody hears us in town. If you live around here playing with the sirens, we do that for a reason, right? So, and I don't know the technical term for it, but there's basically this term that states that if you listen to the same sound over and over again, eventually your mind just kind of becomes numb to that sound, you stop hearing it. And so when we're coming up to red lights or we're coming up to traffic or stop signs or whatever, we swap between sounds because it makes the general population more aware to what's going on. With that said, the general population is kind of dumb, right? People don't pay attention. They like to play on their telephones. I don't know if anybody here has a newer vehicle. She has a brand new car. Well, it's a couple years old now. You can hear nothing outside of that vehicle when you're driving it. That thing is airtight and it is quiet. That's cool when you're riding down the road, but when somebody's coming up behind you with lights and sirens on, unless you're paying attention, you don't hear it.
A lot of ambulances now have, they're called growlers. When you hit it and it'll vibrate the ground, so whoever's driving in front of you actually feels it before they see or hear.
Yeah, it's like, roar, 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 roar.
It's really fun to just run up on people and be like, burn.
Yeah, because it works for all the sirens, like a horn. And you like hit that little growler button, you reach over and hit the horn like, brrr. You know, like vibrates. Super funny. We just do it in Atlanta. But, and another big thing here, your ambulance, I think the siren, I want to say it's 60 miles an hour. I think is when you start to outrun your siren. So our ambulances are governed at 82 miles an hour. So at 82 miles an hour, we are outrunning our sirens, right? At 82 miles an hour on the interstate, if I am coming up behind you, you are going to see me long before you hear me, right? So keep that in mind. When you're running up on traffic, if you're running 70 miles an hour coming across this bridge, nobody's going to hear you. They're just going to see you. And by the time they see you, it's too late. I don't know if anybody's ever run an emergency with around a bunch of traffic. We're taught in school, move to the right. Nobody freaking moves to the right. Everybody slams on brakes. They freaking do this little weird little back and forth thing. Some people shoot right. Some people shoot left. When we were on our way to that freaking accident yesterday morning with all the semi trucks, they had all 3 lanes blocked off, including the emergency lane. I was in the freaking desert hopping over freaking berms trying to get to this accident because they had the whole freaking interstate shut down like a bunch of ding-dings. People don't care. So pay attention, use due regard whenever you're driving an ambulance. This due regard thing, you are definitely going to see at some point, whether it's in one of our tests, whether it's a test for National Registry, you will see due regard because they have pushed it more and more and more because of the accidents that's been happening. So
I thought there was a lot of move over, get out of the way for emergency.
Were we in Harlem before that accident?
I think it depends on the state.
Huh?
I think it's state
And
and
stopped. With our lights down.
I think there was just an accident. Yesterday.
we're at. So this is what we call due regard. So this is another big thing, right? So in a town like this, if we get paged out to an accident, how many responders are coming? Well, how many responders are supposed to come? So you have the sheriff's department. Depending on where it is, you're going to have NHP. You're going to have Battle Mountain Volunteer Fire Department, and them zooming up and down Goddard Road trying to get to the fire department. You're gonna have the sheriff's department, or I said the sheriff, you're gonna have us, right? So you could potentially have 4 agencies, and God forbid, somebody comes rolling down the road and end up like this, right? So pay attention to what you're doing, right? When you're converging onto a scene, understand that you're not the only one converging onto the scene. This was Chicago?
St. Louis. Let's see.
Oh, St. Louis? Oh, yeah, all right. I knew it was one of the cities. All that right there, what was there?
All their water.
Fuel.
But look at the water.
You go like halfway through. Right there.
Right there.
All right, so who's in the right and who's in the wrong?
They're both-
One going from left to right had a green light.
Doesn't matter, they're both wrong.
Yeah, they didn't stop.
So they're about to argue in a court of law. But I can tell you who's gonna lose this.
Red
Whoever's driving,
light.
whoever's driving this fire truck right here is gonna lose that battle,
Because they have the red light.
because they have the red light. Do I think they're both partially in the wrong? Like, probably, because you're not paying attention, right? So if you have this many responders, like, you need to be in a more heightened state of awareness. But the guy coming through this red light right here, headed like north to south, is probably gonna be at fault, just because he has the red light, right? So keep that in mind. Also, a big thing to look at in this picture is all these people standing around right here. This ended about as good as it could because the fire truck just flopped over and took a nap. If this is and was tired. If this was an ambulance or a patrol car,
It would.
they're just gonna go slinging over here to the right side of this picture somewhere, or over to the left side. I don't know if there's people over here on the left side, but now these pedestrians over here are in play to now be a part of a trauma center. So be mindful of that. Now, somebody got hit up all that 5 minutes. That sucks.
That's-
Yeah. All right, so when you arrive on scene, especially, like, if you're pulling in somebody's driveway, I'm not really worried about you leaving your lights on. It works, it helps us around here when the sheriff's department does it, just because sometimes we can't really, people don't like to put numbers on their houses. So when the sheriff's department gets there and they leave their lights on, we kind of have a better idea where we're going, especially at night. But turn your freaking siren on. Thank God darn thing if you pull into this freaking ER, don't run your freaking siren all the way to the front door. Everybody knows you're coming. I promise. And when you pull up to the ER, turn your freaking lights off. It looks like a ding ding, you know. And then protect the scene if you're the first one to arrive. This is extremely important if you are on an accident scene. If the interstate is shut down, get in front of everybody. If the interstate still needs to be shut down, the ambulance is gonna be kind of your primary source of protection until the fire department or the sheriff's department or NHP shows up. But try to protect your scene, deal with your patients. Do not load a patient into the back of an ambulance if you were still in the back of traffic. You need to reposition that ambulance to a safer location. That just means that you pull onto the other side of all the red cars so that they didn't get hit first, like they're already tore up, doesn't get hit again. That's fine, but do not load a patient up in the back of that ambulance, especially on this interstate. If you're the only person there without protecting the back of that ambulance, because somebody comes down there at 80 miles an hour and smacks into the back of your truck with everybody in the back of it, it's not going to do anything. Avoid backing up if possible. Out here, a lot of A lot of the driveways are like horseshoe shaped, or they have like big gravel areas, you can like pull in and turn around. That works really good. If you do back up, or you feel like there's not gonna be a place to turn around, try to back into the driveway so you can pull out. Trying to like pull into a driveway and then back out with a patient, it's easier, because if it's like a sketchy driveway, I can tell Becca like, hey, can you hop out, make sure I don't hit anything, right? If I have like a super sick patient, I can't just tell Becca, hey, leave him right there for a second, I need a spotter, right? So keep that in mind, but we're gonna try to limit backing, just because that's when statistically most of the accidents occur. And then try to place your ambulance in the best place to access your patient. That's one of the biggest fights I have when people first start riding ambulances. They just freaking nose up and they're just like, ah, that's good. They throw it in park. No, like try to find what door's best. These stretchers are super like top heavy and they tip really easy. Everybody out here has gravel and dirt in their driveways and stuff. So the time that you can limit dragging that stretcher across these gravel driveways, the better off you are. If you do have to, like, lower the stretcher down. Marcus is goofy. Lower the stretcher down closer to the ground. That way it limits the chance of this thing flipping over. But most of the time, Beck will tell you, if they're like, you know, if the front door is right there, I'll like pull up so that the back of my ambulance is like facing towards whatever door I'm trying to access. That way I can just pull up, put them right back in, right? And then wear appropriate PPE.
That's reflective vests if you're on the highway.
Yes.
So a lot of like your service insurance, if you get smacked by a car out on the freeway, they won't cover it if you're not wearing your safety vest.
They
So.
love to fight those fights.
They had a guy in Atlanta got smacked by a car. He jumped and it clipped his ankle. So he got very lucky. But they were trying to convince him that he wasn't wearing a safety vest, and he had like this whole battle about it, but he wasn't.
Yeah. I don't know why they think that that safety vest is gonna freaking, yeah. It's like you got your safety vest on, a car runs into you, it's like, you're still gonna get hit by the car. If they're far enough over to hit you with the car, it doesn't matter. So, loading your patient, a couple of things to be mindful of, right? We don't like the backboards, but they are fantastic for moving people, right? Do not keep your patient on the backboard. If you need to move your patient, move them with the backboard, right? But don't strap them down to this with the intent of leaving them on there. Out here, snow and ice is a big thing. So you see how jacked up this stretcher is? If I'm pulling grandma across her yard, you do not need to have that stretcher that high off the ground. Even if you have like multiple people there, you need to have people on all sides of this stretcher, and you need to drop that stretcher down to about hip height. It just limits its ability to roll over. And then these mega movers right here are bee's knees. They work so good. Yeah, the handles are fantastic. You can put like 6 people on this thing. The only time you gotta worry about it is when you're like trying to get through doors. Everybody got like big skinny. We're like doing this like weird little puzzle shuffle to try to get through doors. But other than that, they're freaking fantastic. And then I don't know, I don't have the dreaded stair chair on here. So the stair chair obviously is another way to get your patient out. I have dragged stair chairs all the way to the ambulance before because like the material leading up to their doors or whatever was like too soft or whatever. I can grab a stair chair, and generally if they're not like extremely obese, I can grab a stair chair, somebody else can grab the feet, and we can just pick them up and like carry them to the ambulance, and then just lift the stretcher up and put it back in the ambulance. So when you're thinking about moving your patients around, consider all hazards, right? Snow is the big one out here. We carry like little spiky cleat things in the doors of our ambulance. So if it is snowing or icy outside, we can put those on our feet. Doesn't help your stretcher situation, right? So, everything look good? All right. So, the next phase is transporting your patient. So, secure yourself in the seat belts if at all possible. We're not always really good at this, but typically we're in the back, like trying to do things. If you're on a long transport and you're not doing anything, even if you sit beside the patient, you can grab the monitor and like spin it around, sit it on the ground or whatever. And then you can like sit beside the patient and buckle yourself in a seatbelt. That way you can still have eyes on the patient. You can still see your monitor, but you're secure. And then always recheck and monitor your patients. You always need to expect the unexpected. So be prepared for changes in your patients. And then, constantly evaluating your patients. But the number one thing that gets people in trouble with transporting and injuries and accidents is not properly securing your patient to the stretcher. So in our stretchers, we have ankle, knee, lap, and harnesses, right? So if you do not have all points of contact on your patient and something happens, you will be at fault. They will 100% know you've been fault. So we had an incident in Georgia when we were there, one of these fly-by-night Medicaid fraud ambulance companies popped up. They were actually transporting one of our paramedics' grandparents from a hospital to a nursing facility. The driver of this ambulance was intoxicated.
With open containers.
With open containers. His partner was sitting in the passenger seat. The patient was in the back of the ambulance by himself. So, of all the things that got them in trouble, what got them in trouble the most was they were driving down the road, they made it to the facility, rolled the ambulance over in the ditch. The patient was not secured to the stretcher appropriately. The patient come out from the stretcher, come off the stretcher, broke his neck and died. So, that paramedic no longer has to work because he sued the piss out of every guy. Super nice guy. Honestly, I felt super bad for him, but that was in our jurisdiction. At first, we thought it was one of our ambulances, so everybody was freaking out because we thought one of our trucks had rolled over. But keep that in mind. If you do not secure, it doesn't matter. You ain't got to be drunk. You ain't got to be doing nothing stupid. Those shoulder belts are the ones that get most people because we get people in the back of the truck. When you do all the things to their chest and stomach, and then you get riding down the road, you don't put the shoulder straps on them, you hit something, nothing's going to stop them. They're going to slip right out from under the rest of those belts and go flat. So make sure all of their seat belts are tightened so that they don't go nowhere. And then speak to your patients en route to the hospital. Patients love to talk about what happened to them in the second grade. That's fine. Just listen to them. That's your time to listen to them. When you're on scene, get your pertinent information that you need. When you're en route to the hospital, sit down, talk to them. They'll give you some other information. It may help you. It may just be a nice little old lady wants somebody to talk to, and she's going to talk to you though. That's what I do. Becca says, and she actually taught me this because when I first started, I rode with a very grumpy old man, and he was like, freaking people talk too much. And I was like, yeah, freaking people. And so I stopped talking to people, and I started around Becca, and Becca was like, yeah, like, people are intriguing. Like, you talk to people, and you can learn a lot. Like, people have cool stories, and like, so just talk to your patients. And then don't forget to call and report. Please, they get mad when you do that. Sometimes it's accidental. It's fine if you got a lot going on. You can apologize later on. You're going to walk in there, some nurse is going to email you, and they're going to get all pissy. especially if your patient is sick, like super sick, make sure you give them a heads up so they know you're coming. Radio report. Some places that you go will have like a recorded phone line that you call, and that's how you can give your report. Around here for this hospital, we have a radio report. Sometimes the radio works, sometimes it doesn't. The best way that I can tell you is that you say your report over the radio because it's a recorded system on the state. So the state records all of our radio reports. So give your report over the radio and then call the hospital and make sure they heard it. Right? Because they might not have heard you. If you got somebody super sick and you're coming, if they acknowledge you and they say, oh, okay, we'll see you in 5 minutes or whatever, cool. But if they don't acknowledge you, call them, make sure they know that you're coming. And then turning over patient care. So help the patient or the hospital. Don't be a dick to the hospital when you get there and be like, here's your patient. Help people move the patient. Sometimes it takes a freaking village to move some people. So when you're moving patients, try to bring them up to you. Don't go down to them, right? So pull the stretcher up about hip height, right? And then use your stronger people to do like the pulling or pushing, depending on like how heavy they are. Like me and Becca, we have like a technique. I will typically take like the harder part of the moving process. So figure out who your stronger people are and put them on the more, on the workload side of it. Cause I don't want Becca to hurt herself, right? So honestly, and she'll tell you, before we come here, we didn't have the little automatic load stretchers. She never lifted a stretcher. She was spoiled. I lifted all the stretchers. Mainly because like if you have two people that's like similar height, putting two people in a stretcher is nice, but with our height difference, I would either have to like hunch my back to like get down to her level, or she'd be like on her tippy toes trying to get up to mine. So it's just easier. Another big thing is when you're loading and unloading patients, if you don't have one of the automatic like loaders, your belt is a fantastic place to rest that stretcher. You just pick that thing up and sit it on your belt, and it works really good. So give an in-depth verbal report. This is where that comes in, right? So your initial call-in report, like we've talked about, should be short and sweet, right? What you saw when you got there, what they're complaining about, what you did, what their vitals are like, and any major changes. If I got there and their blood sugar was 20 and they were unresponsive, and now their blood sugar is 110 and they're talking to me, that's where you're ready to report. Hey, when I arrived on scene, I got called for an altered mental status. When I arrived on scene, my patient had a BGL of 22. They were unresponsive. They now have a BGL of 110, A&O times 4, G-chest 50, right? Any big changes in your patient. If you got there and you're like, hey, my patient was complaining of chest pain, their blood pressure was 130/90, I gave them 1 nitro, their blood pressure is 80/40, I'm not administering any more nitro, right? Like any big changes goes in your radio report. When you get to the hospital, that's where you're given the big report. Allergies, medications that they're on, their medical history, all of that is going to go whenever you get to the hospital. You're not going to sit there for 5 minutes giving a radio report about all this. You're going to talk about it when you get to the hospital. And please make sure you get all your appropriate signatures. So you need a signature from your patient that authorizes your transport. And then you need a signature from whoever received the patient. You cannot relinquish your patient to a provider lower than you. So once you have that patient, technically you cannot give that patient, like we cannot give off patients to CNAs. That makes sense? In an emergency situation. I cannot release my patient to a CNA. It has to be a nurse or a doctor. Typically doctors aren't going to sign your paperwork. Every once in a while they will, but typically they don't. So get your nurse to sign your paperwork, get your patient to sign. If your patient cannot sign for whatever reason, make sure you document that as well. patient signature was unable to be obtained due to patient's death, right?
If
Like,
your patient is altered in any way, if they have a GCS lower than 4 or 15, so if they are just slightly confused, but you're like, sign this, and they're like, okay. If you chart that their GCS was 14 and they sign it, there's a lot of things that can come back. So if they are altered in any way, the nurse needs to sign for them or family members. So just make sure if you chart that they're altered, you need to have someone else or sign for them.
So often if they got a bag full of medicine, you have to write every medicine down.
yes, you are supposed to write every medication that they take down. Now, with that said, I am not a fan of bringing their medications with them. That's just a me thing. I think that people like to lose medications, especially when we're in Atlanta. People are like, oh, they got this freaking laundry basket full of medications. And I'd be like, no. So that's why we write all their medications down, because when I get to the ER, I can be like, they take all of these meds. Here you go. And then if they need administration of any of those medications, the ER can do it. Some people will take their medications. If you do take any of their personal belongings, medications, clothing, their wallet, document in their stuff where that was left. So if you took their medications with them, there's a place on our documentation that says patient belongings. You put in there patient medications left with nurse, Winnie, whatever, right? Make sure you document that too, because we have had cases where people come back and they're like, you stole my wallet. I didn't even touch your wallet. Look for you. You stole my lasso. I didn't, what lasso? Right? So like, keep that in mind, right? Mark has got cussed out about lasso. You got cussed. He's like, a freaking EMT stole my lasso. No, we didn't. So.
Marcus is just out there.
Yeah, Marcus out there in the freaking parking lot. Got him both. So keep that in mind. If you do take it, document where it was left. I am a fan of just getting a list of their medications. There's a place in our documentation that has patient medications on there. You can write all that down and then show the doctor or the hospital or whoever you're dropping them off to. If they're bound and determined to take their medications and there's a family member coming, tell the family member like, hey, you bring it, right? Because now it's out of your hands, and if they get lost, not on you. Patient dentures are a huge issue. Do not lose their freaking teeth. Them goddamn things are expensive. Becca likes to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. Do not lose their $20,000 teeth. All right? If you have to remove their teeth when you're bagging them or doing whatever, put them somewhere safe. Make sure they get with that patient and they do not get lost. Those things are freaking expensive, and them little old people get real mad about it.
There's been times like jewelry as well, like sometimes we have to cut jewelry off. So if you cut it, describe what you cut. So like a gold colored ring, I don't put gold ring. I don't know if it's gold. So I say like gold colored ring, cut, left with patient. So like if I cut their clothes, I'll mark that too. Like T-shirt and pants cut by EMS providers, left with patient or nurse or whatever. Just because it can come back to you like, oh, now my ring's in half and this ring's very expensive. So don't just like, oh, I cut it, toss it. Don't do that. Leave it with the patient.
Yep. Very, very important. Cover yourself. All right. And then termination of the call. So let dispatch know you're in service. We forget that at least twice a shift, a day. It doesn't matter. Let them know that you're in service. Call them on the radio. Clean your equipment in your ambulance. If there's blood, clean the freaking blood. You don't want to be running around with somebody else's blood on a freaking stretcher picking up other people. Restock your ambulance. This is where like the overstock comes in play. Like don't overstock your truck. This is why we restock after every call to make sure you have the equipment that you need. And then finish your paperwork in a timely manner. The state has a 48-hour time limit on billable paperwork.
It has to be started within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And complete within 40 days.
So if your paperwork is not started within 24 hours of a 911 call and completed within 48 hours, it is no longer a billable piece of paper. So you will get in trouble for that. So make sure your stuff is started and completed within a timely manner. Also, depending on where you work, if you do not do your paperwork fast, you're going to be late getting off. Me and Becca would run 12 to 15 calls in 13 hours. I don't know if you've ever tried to do freaking 15 reports before, but trying to get that done in 12 hours, we got real fast at doing charts. So make sure your paperwork's done. So air resources, out here, we have two types of air resources. We have the rotor and fixed wing. Out here, we have, as of right now, we have Intermountain, formerly known as MedX, formerly known as Classic Air.
Can you remember all the names?
There was one more in there somewhere. I don't know. But we also have Reach. So MedX has resources right now in Elko, and they have one helicopter and one muck-up. Reach has resources in Elko. The next closest resource to us is going to be CareFlight and Battleborn out of like the Reno, Urington, Carson, Fallon area, like that area down there has a couple of like CareFlight and Battleborn resources. Dispatch has all of the contact information for all of those resources. So like for Lander County, whenever we call and say, hey, I need a flight, they'll typically ask who you want. So knowing the capabilities of the resources that you're requesting is important. So there's only one flight agency in the northern Nevada region. I don't know why they call freaking Reno northern Nevada. Anyway, in this area that carries blood products, and that's Reach. So MedX doesn't currently carry, Intermountain doesn't currently carry blood products. So when we have like really bad traumas, typically we will try to pick out Reach first because of the blood products, right? So knowing the capabilities of whatever resource you have is important. And then time-wise, right? If I'm out in Valmy, probably gonna contact Intermountain first because they have a resource in Winnemucca, and so they're gonna be closer. If I'm out by the rest areas going up Immigrant, it doesn't really matter because Reach and Intermountain both have resources out in that area, and they have the power plant out there has a helipad out there, and I can drop a rotor out there on their helipad, right? So like knowing where your resources are and who is closer is also very, very important. The only downside is the rotors will typically turn down flights a lot faster than the fixed wings will. So like today, you're probably not going to get a rotor in there right now. It's cloudy out. There's thunderstorms in the area. Probably not going to get a helicopter on. You can probably still finesse your way into a fixed wing. They have a Reach fixed wing. Intermountain is kind of just, but there's a lot in play here. So I don't know if y'all remember when the CareFlight plane went down a handful of years ago down there in Reno. So stuff like that happens. They do like this big internal audit of air resources in the medical field, and then they like get more stringent on like the flight parameters. So they're very picky about what they can and can't fly in. So understand that is a limitation for these resources as to what they can and can't fly in. So you may look at the weather outside and you're like, bro, it's sunny and 75 out here. Well, it may be storming in Elko and they're not going to come off the ground, right? So keep that in mind. They are very, very good assets to have. Hopefully we have one in town soon, because having that capability of like not having to wait an hour for one would be super nice. So when you call Air Resources, call them early. Normally done through dispatch. Like I said, every once in a while our dispatch will ask who we want to request. If we have a specific one that we want to request, that's fine. But get them started early. And then landing zones, if I'm out on the interstate, if I don't need to shut the interstate down, I'm not going to. I'm going to try to find some way to get off the interstate. Marigold has a spot that I can land at. The power plant out there in Argenta has a spot I can land at. We're not ever more than like 15, 20 minutes from town typically. So I'll come back to town. If you're down on 305, they got the big rest area down there in the middle of 305, halfway between here and Austin. That's a great spot to land somebody. So understanding where you're going from your scene is very, very important. Because, as we saw recently in Marigold, when you call for Air Resource, you give them the coordinates, and they're like, where the frick are you? They're sitting there flying circles around this one.
We got the wrong one.
You're gonna like send out a flare, like freaking, come here. So let them know where you want them to go. When you set up, it is very, very important to give them what we like to do. So we have a talk around channel for Air Resources. When they start getting close, they'll get on the radio and they'll ask for any patient updates. Have somebody ready for that kind of communication, because typically they're gonna ask if there are any hazards in the landing zone area. So if there's any power lines in the vicinity, if there's any vehicles that they need to be worried about, if there's any potential for flying debris, stuff like that, that's all questions that they're gonna ask, and it's great information just to relay off to them. Landing zone, minimum should be like 100 by 100, right? We have the little lighting flare things.
Please don't use real flares.
Do not use real flares. Ambassadors get sucked off the ground into the helicopter. Now you gotta call fire.
Or my scenario, we had a car roll over into a hayfield, 4 people ejected into the hayfield, hay bales. They laid out flares and was like, land right here. And I'm like, hey, everywhere.
Hey, wildfire, please don't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so be mindful. Your landing zone should be appropriate for your resource. If you have a fixed wing coming, dispatch will generally relay that off to you and be like, hey, I can't get a rotor, fixed wing's coming, they're gonna land at their point, right? So you know to start heading back that way. Like I said, you have about an hour to play with. So typically we'll try to land them back here or at the airport. I have landed a handful down at the rest area on 305 and at the power plant out there in Argenta. And then I landed my first one out there in the middle of Marigold. So just keep that in mind. Know where it is appropriate to land them, because I'm not going to land them on the side of a freaking mountain and stuff like that. So when they do land, do not approach these aircrafts without being told to. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the video of the guy that's like walking up to the freaking helicopter, sitting there, and freaking blade clips him across his forehead, just sleeps instantly, slept. So do not approach these helicopters until they're ready. Even when we're on the back pad out here and the helicopter lands, we won't pull up close to that helicopter until they get everything shut down. They used to do this like hot load thing where they kept everything running. They used to run over there and like throw your patient in there and freaking run away. You don't really see that very often anymore. Every once in a while, you'll get a crew that gets some wild hair in their butt that wants to do this hot load thing. Typically, they won't do that. Typically, they'll drop down. They'll come into the back of the ambulance. They'll do all of their stuff, and then we'll move them. So don't approach the helicopter until they give you permission to.
So the pilot will look at you and give you a thumbs up when you
Yeah.
can.
Also, do not approach helicopters from the back, because they can't see you back there. I have seen helicopters like go to settle down on the ground and then lift and rotate. So if you go running up into the back of this helicopter after they settle down and then they go to lift and rotate, you're another patient. So danger zones, back, and any sort of blind spots. So when you're looking at the front of a helicopter, there's like a fan. You have to imagine it like a fan. And that's kind of like your green zone for like looking at the pilot and getting that permission. Another big thing is if your helicopter ever has to land on a hill, do not approach from the downhill because those rotors, you know, you got a hill like this and your helicopter lands, obviously you don't have as much clearance on the uphill side of that, but don't approach from that side. And then secure loose items and clothing. Take your hats off when these things are landing. If you're the person that shuts down a helicopter because you left your freaking hat on like ding ding and it gets sucked off and hits the side of the helicopter, they're gonna shut that helicopter down and now it has to be evaluated by a maintenance guy before they can restart it. So congratulations, you have now taken away our air resource. So take off any hats, any sort of loose clothing that you have on, anything. If you got like a freaking shirt tied around your waist, take that bull crap off and throw it in something like a vehicle. And then prepare your patient for transfer of care. Typically, we will keep them on all of our monitoring systems until the flight crew brings all their stuff over and wants to change them, because they'll like look at your monitor, they'll check all your last vitals, anything that you've done, like they'll look at all that stuff, and then they'll swap all their stuff over. So just keep all your stuff on there until they give you the go ahead to start pulling all your stuff off.
Also, like at night, if you are landing a helicopter at night and you turn your flashy lights off on the ambulance, so they use night vision for everything, and you will blind the crap out of them. So turn all your flashy lights off. I always dim my headlights too. They recommend, like if you're like marking out a landing zone, to keep any lights pointed towards the ground, not straight up, because you will blind them. And then, so the reason that you can hot load, but you can't just like walk up as it's shutting down, is because those propellers, as they slow down, they start to bend downwards. So when it's like going, those propellers are up. That's why you can hot load. But if at any point they start shutting down and they start to droop, that's where you'll freaking take a little off the top. So yeah, just be mindful. Don't be out there with like a flashlight, like, hey, we're over here, because and then the helicopter starts doing this and the thing.
Yeah.
Also, if you notice like any power lines, they're probably going to see them anyway, but if you are setting up a landing zone and you know that there's a power line, 100 feet this way or 100 yards this way, I always just let them know if you're setting it up. So that's why it's nice to have ones that are already established, like these helipads, because you don't have to go out there and mark it off and look around. But
Until they throw random radio towers up around freaking hell.
yeah, so if you know about like certain power lines or anything like that, don't use flares.
Cool. That about as fun as it seemed like it was. EMS operations, terrible. The biggest things that I can tell you about this, due regard, you're gonna hear about again and again and again. Driving an ambulance appropriately, you're gonna hear about it. So understand what due regard means. Understand landing zone etiquette and flight etiquette, knowing how big your landing zone should be, stuff like that. That's going to be important. You're going to see it over and over again. And then knowing the roles of like EMD dispatchers is important.
Is there a question on there about what color people can see the best?
What do you mean?
So like when you're talking about like emergency lights, there's certain colors that people actually see better. And I know we use white and red and blue, but the best color for people to see is actually amber. So if you ever see a test question about like what color of emergency lights, it's always amber. They can see them the best.
Yeah.
And people are ding dings, like they see flashy lights and they're like, oh, flashy lights. And that's
Yeah,
how
they
they
actually look
do it.
at them.
Yeah.
They're, like trying to see where you guys are going and like
And they do
stop in
this.
the middle of the intersection.
And they'll just run into you.
Yeah.
So, cool. Any questions? Concerns?
Pretty
Right,
much.
complaints?
Never park your ambulance like sideways on a road. basically.
I think that,
We got
that-
to the fire department.
I think that goes, I go over that in the,
And the next one.
no, it's in the,
The only time we do is for the first arrival in an accident.
No.
Because
So you, with an ambulance, like you have the road, like this road. And let's say there's an accident right here, you're gonna pull up and park in front. Never park your ambulance like this. Because they're not going to see you, and they're gonna.
I think the
So-
book says to, if you're the first on scene,
Yeah,
to block
so-
first
the
on scene, you
scene.
park behind.
yeah,
but I
if
see
you're
what
first on scene, they teach you to park behind and angle your ambulance
block
away
the
from the crash scene, and then when the second responder, no.
Oh,
So-
Behind it here.
Yeah, so like if your accident,
No, you're the buffer zone.
so
Oh.
if your accident is here, so you have like multiple vehicles here, you park your ambulance here, right? You got the little front of the ambulance right there, and you angle it away from your accident scene. And then as other responders come up, they tell you to move up there. That's what
Yeah, I
they
was
teach
taught-
in the EBOS course.
I was taught never to park it like this.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you don't ever
That's
park
what I'm
it,
saying.
yeah.
You don't want them getting
Oh,
it. I think we go over that
I think we,
in one of the chapters, there's a picture.
I'm
If you
trying
don't
to,
wanna freaking get smacked. And
Yeah,
that
was
fire
this one
truck's
for
gonna
this, right?
take a hit a lot better than
I
your
think
ambulance.
it's
or
the, I think
Yeah,
it's this
you're
one.
just the buffer zone until the fire department gets there, and once the fire department gets there, then you move
Is that
out
what-
of the way.
See, the problem that I've ran into with that though, is like if I've ran into this where there's
The
an
highway
accident
safety.
and you park here and then fire comes and parks right here. And now you can't get around them. So for you to leave, they have to do all of their stuff and move them. So that's, I've ran into that multiple times.
So these last 4 chapters are all pretty short. I think, that's the longest one, and it's 30 slides, so. Yep, so, yep. So I should have an answer for y'all, hopefully by Thursday, as to whether we're doing the National Registry on Friday or Saturday. Tentatively, regardless of what day it is, I just need to know a solid head count on who is coming here to take their test. And basically, I need to know if anybody's not going to, because he's gonna ask who's coming, so that he knows how much equipment to bring and how many tests he has to apply for. So when he comes down here, he has to apply for a certain number of tests. So if you're not going to be here, let me know. I will preference this by saying, because this was a problem last year. So with this many people, he may or may not break it up into 2 separate sections. He may do like an 8 a.m. and then like an 11 a.m. or an 8 a.m. and a 1 p.m. or something like that. And I'll let you know that for sure too. If he does break it up into 2 separate sections, if you say that you are going to be here at 8 a.m., you are expected to be here at 8 a.m. If you say you are going to be here at 11 a.m., you're expected to be here at 11 a.m. It's okay to be here early. If you show up at 2 p.m. and it's like, oh man, I freaking overslept, can I take my test? Absolutely not. You'll be told. So, we
You're
ran
almost
into
better
that
if you're
last
not
year.
showing up at that point.
Yeah, we ran into that last year. Somebody showed up like freaking 4 hours late and was like, oh, I overslept. Like, bro, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, what the frick are you talking about? Right? If you do that, you will be sent home. Period. No questions asked, no conversations. If something comes up that morning and you're not gonna make it, you need to phone call somebody at this department to let them know. But if you just randomly show up 4 hours late, you will be turned around at the door and you will not be allowed to test. So as we get closer to this, we are gonna have a couple of things that happen. There is a PAT that will be done. Is that what it's called? Attempt to test, ATT,
Yeah.
ATT, there it is.
Sounds like pee, like the assessment.
She's all cute, what?
Yes, it's an ATT, so it's an attempt to test letter, right? So, after we approve everybody to test, you will get this letter, you will have to go on and sign on, pay your little money so that you can test. Say a little money, it's like $100. $110. How much is it?
I think I would plan on like 120. I think it's less than that, but I can't recall.
Yeah, I don't remember. But get your ATT letter, then you have to pay your little money, and then you come down here to test. Logistically, once you are done testing, once you have your certificate in hand, you have been blessed by the National Registry Gods, $104. Right there at the top.
Yeah, I don't always trust that.
That's a guy.
So, once you once you pass your test, you get the letter, and you have been blessed by the EMS, National Registry, money-making gods. Then you can apply for your state license. You can apply to be a state EMT, but to ride and operate an ambulance in the state of Nevada, you need an ambulance attendee's license. So you can apply for your state license. Unless you are directly associated with a working EMS agency, you will not be able to apply for your EMS attendee's license. That is a cash grab by the state that basically they just get to take money from you. So you will apply for your state license. There will be a handful of things that you have to do. You have to do like fingerprints. You have to do a physician's statement form that says that you're not about to kill over tomorrow. You will have to upload your BLS card and a background driving history thing. So you'll upload all that document onto the state website. Not for just a regular license. You don't need that until you apply for the attendee's license.
Oh, I thought you were still talking about the attendees.
No. So once you upload that, they'll give you your state licensure, and everything else will kind of disappear from there. Once you get associated with an EMS agency and you have a direct affiliation with that agency, then you can apply for an attendee's license. You will need a valid EBOS course before you can get that. That's the only big thing that you need prior to.
That one's online, right?
No,
There is
I
one
think they
online.
have one online.
I think it's like $75.
Yeah, but like we trying to become instructors for EBOS, that's a whole other issue. The freaking Intermountain that I want to fight some people over. But so if we do that, then we'll start offering that class as well. So yeah, cool. Any questions?
Are we gonna figure out a date for the skills too? Or is
Yeah.
that way out there?
No, it'll probably be, because we're on our last couple of Saturdays, it'll probably be like the middle of June. I don't have my freaking calendar, but it'll probably be like the middle of June. I'll get with Becca over the next couple of days, and we'll figure out a day for that. And we might just do the 20th since we're not testing that day.
So for your skills final, it's gonna be a medical scenario, a trauma scenario, and then the CPR scenario.
Yeah.
So 3 scenarios, we'll just rotate you all through. There's gonna be different proctors in each room. We'll figure out a way, you get a little card, go to a room, and then you'll do a scenario. If you fail that day, you're allowed to retake it that same day one time. If you fail that time, you have to wait another 2 weeks or whatever it is to take it again. So you have 2 chances in one day per scenario.
And that's why we're probably gonna push that up closer to the middle of June. That way, if you do happen to fail twice that day, you have a chance to retake it before the National Registry. Because we use that as your skills sign off. So that's the other thing that you have to do your EMT license for the state, is a skills sign-off sheet that says that you can perform all of these skills as an EMT basic. And that's how we do that. It's a way to sign off on your entire skills check-off list. That way, when you graduate, you can take that with you and you can use that as your way to apply for a state license. So, any questions, concerns? I don't care about complaints. Cool. Down to 10:15. I'm good.
Okay.
You good?